Hello, and welcome back to London Cycle Routes. Today, I'll be showing you how to cycle from Finsbury Park in North London to Westminster in Central London. This ride takes about 40 minutes, and you can do pretty much the whole thing on quiet streets and protected cycle lanes. This is a 6-mile route, and there have been a lot of improvements recently along its length, so even if you think you know the way, it's definitely worth watching to see what's been added recently. And if you enjoy this video or you just find it useful, then do make sure you subscribe to the channel on YouTube because I post new ones like it every week. Alright, let's get going. So we're starting outside the main gate of Finsbury Park and you wait for the lights to cross Seven Sisters Road. Now head into Finsbury Park Road. Unfortunately at the moment Thames Water has closed the road here, and it looks like a Virgin Media contractor has parked in the gap that they've left for cyclists, but normally you'd be able to cycle through there. If you do have to go around it and go on the pavement, then do make sure you dismount. At the moment we're actually in a historic low traffic neighbourhood called Brownswood, and this has been in place for decades, and as a result there's not very much traffic on these streets. Although when I came here we had to squeeze past that van which was not legally parked. You cross Blackstock Road at the signals and you head down Ambler Road, and this is taking us into a new low traffic neighbourhood called Highbury, which has really opened up a lot of routes around here. So it's a similar story on these roads. We're not cycling in cycle lanes or anything like that, we're on the main carriageway, but you're not going to run into any traffic at all really. The only downside I say of these roads is there's quite a lot of parking on both sides and there are a lot of deliveries to these houses, so it can be a little bit narrow, so watch out, but generally I'd say it's a pretty nice ride. Now as you keep going up this road you'll see that there's a massive hill. Just head towards the massive hill, but don't worry, we're not actually going to go all the way up it. We're going to turn right at the next right onto Gillespie Road. If you know your history of the London Underground, you'll know that Gillespie Road is the old name for the Arsenal tube station, and that's really just a clue as to what's coming up next. That tube station will actually just be coming up here, I believe, on our right, and there it is. You can see we're actually still in a low traffic neighbourhood. There's a few cars around, mostly vans making deliveries and stuff like this, and but the volume of traffic is extremely low, particularly when you look at a corner like that, which appears to have been built for cars to go around it at speed and sort of reconstructed with a crash barrier. On the right here is, of course, Emirates Stadium, which is the stadium for Arsenal Football Club. Now, this road is Drayton Park, and it's had a lot of improvements recently. Apart from being in a low traffic neighbourhood, it's in the Highbury LTNs, so we can cycle on the carriageway quite comfortably here. It's also had decent protected cycle lanes added, so you can see on the right there, beyond those parked cars in the opposite direction, there is a really good protected lane. And it doesn't start on our side of the road for a little bit longer, but we are actually going to join it in a second. If you're coming in the opposite direction though, you can enjoy a protected lane pretty much the whole way, and you can see there's somebody using it. Here is where it starts for us. It's a little bit later, but really this is really good stuff. This is a borough scheme by Islington Council, and you'll see it's just extremely nice to ride on. I'd love to see this extended. That's Drayton Park Station on our right, by the way, if that helps you get your bearings. We're sort of heading solidly into Islington now. Islington, for a long time, I didn't really rate as a council for cycling especially, but in the last couple of years they've actually gone extremely hyperactive at doing some really good stuff. So low traffic neighbourhoods, these great lanes here, and a really fantastic lane we're about to see in a minute. This is also a real treat. This is a protected roundabout, so you can actually go all the way around that using cycle crossings and protected lanes. It's described as Dutch style. It's definitely the best I've seen, and I'd love to see that design rolled out elsewhere. I can think of a few places I'd like to see it. Certainly on the Vauxhall Bridge North roundabout, that would make a lot of sense, I think. So we're coming up here down Horsell Road, and when you get to the end of here you just want to turn right onto this crescent, and there's quite a nicely done cycle crossing here across the main road. Unfortunately a car was a little bit oblivious to it and parked in it, but it doesn't really stop us from going through. And we go on to Madras Place, which is a filtered street and has a lot of cycle symbols painted on the road. That really is a lot. I don't know why they need so many, but I guess that's welcome. Now we're coming up to Liverpool Road. This used to be a very hostile place to cycle. Big road, big way of getting into Islington. Recently had sort of a light segregation, light protected cycle lane put in. So This lane we're in, it could be a little bit wider maybe, but it's got these nice sort of wands, they call them, for protecting it. And it's also, you might know, in a lot of places protected by parking, which is quite counterintuitive, because normally you think, oh, parking, that's cars, that's sort of not the enemy, but it's the it definitely makes cycling more difficult. But actually, they can coexist quite nicely on a lot of roads, and parking actually makes really good segregation and protection for lanes. It actually makes it feel quite comfortable when you ride down there, as long as they leave a gap there so the door isn't opened in your way. So if someone opens the door in the lane, that can be quite dangerous. But you can see here they left a nice gap between the space and the lane, so you're less likely to get doored by somebody opening it in your face, which would be quite annoying. You see this is a very popular lane, lots of people using it. It's a really, really useful route. Massive props to the council for doing that. Unfortunately, not everybody is compliant, so this guy's just sort of obliviously parked in the cycle box, which makes it a little bit more difficult to go down the road. I don't think the police enforce those they're technically called advanced stop lines. I don't think the police enforce them. It is technically an offence to cross and to park in the cycle box, but whatever. Now, this lane does continue right into central Islington, but we're actually going to turn off it to avoid an unsegregated stretch on Amwell Street. We're going to turn down Barnsbury Road. This is normally a much easier turn. You can go left of the pedestrian island, but obviously you can see there's a temporary sort of roadworks digging up that lane, so it makes it a little bit more difficult for us. Hopefully that should be gone by the time you get there. Those broadband digs are basically everywhere over London at the moment, and they're quite disruptive. I mean, I guess they've got to do what they've got to do. What we're going to do now is we're picking our way through these filtered streets to the west of Liverpool Road, and I think this is just a nicer place to ride than going on the main road at the moment. These are very picturesque squares, so it's quite nice to see the nice houses. There are a couple of different ways you can go through these back streets. They're a little bit maze-like. I think the important thing is to stick to roads that are filtered and that have those like gates and bollards on them, because that's what keeps the traffic out. And then generally you should be okay. By the way, this is probably a good time to say that if you find this video useful or you just enjoy it, then do make sure you subscribe to the channel, because I do post new ones like it every week with hopefully really useful routes, or some people just say that they enjoy watching the videos. So, if you enjoy them, subscribe, why not? I'm not sure about the route I've taken here, by the way. I mean, this Cloudesley Road, it's clearly fine, there's not very much traffic on it. It might have been better to continue through the square at the end, onto Cloudesley Place instead. It's really up to you. I mean, you can see it's quiet enough that someone's pushing a pram in the road and there's a few people cycling, so maybe it's fine. But in theory, I think there might be slightly quieter routes. And you can see that there's a nice sort of filter at the end of that street, which makes things really quiet on this part of the road. Now, you actually have to dismount here. There's not a drop curb and there's no provision for cycling, so just walk up to the zebra and then get back on your bike and cycle right down Tolpuddle Street. Now, the first thing you might notice is there are probably going to be motorists illegally parked on the double yellow lines there, and the reason for that is apparently because the Sainsbury's car park requires you to pay, so they're trying to avoid paying for the car park. But generally, even if they weren't doing that, Tolpuddle Street is not the best place to cycle, so it could really do with some improvements. I think protected lanes to link it up would really help. Penton Street is a similar story. There are actually some new sort of semi-protected lanes here. You can see these are protected by parking, and they're actually pretty nice, but they're a little bit inconsistent. They sort of give up. There's not one here. If that was sort of reinforced, extended a little bit, I think that would make a big difference to improving this route a lot. And then when we cross the road, we head into Claremont Square, which then becomes Amwell Street, and I think that's a really similar story too. It could definitely do with some protected lanes, and I think we can see that there's definitely enough space to fit them in. It's a very wide street, and of course we've just passed a temporary bit of roadworks on our left there, so hopefully that shouldn't be there when you come back here. This is a bit of a hill if you're doing it in the opposite direction, by the way, Amwell Street, but we're going down it at the moment, so it's basically okay. We're briefly on Quiet Way 2. That's a TfL route that will also soon be renamed Cycleway 27 or C27, and you can follow that arrow around here onto Margery Street. This has a contraflow cycle lane in the opposite direction. You can see it on the right there, so it's one way for cars but two way for bikes. This route is fine, but actually I think I may have missed a trick, and you might be able to cut the corner and save, a minute or two. If you continue down Amwell Street instead of going down Margery Street, and then go on to Rossman Street, and then there's a path that cuts through the Sparfields playground onto Northampton Road. That comes out onto Clerkenwell Close, and then you can go Clerkenwell Green, and it'll actually dump you at the junction of Clerkenwell Road and Farringdon Road, which is where we're going to end up in a minute when we get past all this building work. I don't know, I haven't actually tried it, so if anybody is cycling this way, then give that a go and tell me what you think. I just noticed it on the map when I was editing up this video, and I realised that maybe that's a better way to go than this way. But yeah, this way is completely fine. There is a little bit of construction work back there past those new flats, so there'll be a lot of heavy vehicles around. They can be a bit hazardous, so do watch out. But generally, this is the official route of Cycleway 6, and it's a pretty good route. It's generally on quiet streets, and there's protected sections here. But yeah, if you'd done that detour, you'd probably come out somewhere around here, and it might be a little bit more direct. So I don't know, see what happens. But as you can see from the video, this way is perfectly fine, and I don't think you save very much time. It's a little bit more direct on the map. And yeah, we're now on a fantastic cycleway. It's called Cycleway 6. It's one of TfL's flagship routes, and it just goes right down Farringdon Road all the way to Blackfriars. And then when we get to Blackfriars, we're going to turn right, and we're going to go down the Embankment all the way to Westminster. And obviously I plan on doing other videos from Finsbury Park and maybe a few from Haringey Green Lanes as well, using similar routes, maybe optimised a little bit after people's feedback. But if you want to go, say, to the City of London, when you get to the end of this road, when you get to Blackfriars, you can just turn left and go east down the river. And you'll be able to get to the City or the East End rather than Westminster or the West End. But generally, for this route, the main thing to remember is you're really on the sort of gold standard of cycle lane. One of the best routes that London has to offer for cycling on. It's protected pretty much the whole way. There are some slightly odd bits. I mean, this little raised platform here, I was told that's there to. It was apparently a lot cheaper to build it like that because it meant that they didn't have to redo the drainage. You can see how wide the lane is. By the way, those guys riding comfortably two abreast, and I'm still able to overtake them a third person. This bit's a little bit weird because the cycle lane switches sides. You have to wait for the lights to cross the road. That can take a little bit of a while actually. Some of the light timings on this route can be a little bit slow or a little bit odd, but generally it's to keep you separated from the motor traffic. But you can just see it's extremely well used, and no matter what time of day you come on here, there's always people cycling up and down it. And the same is true of the Embankment when you get to the end of it as well. I should remind you guys, by the way, that if you want to see a map of this route, or you want to download GPS or GPX files for an app or device of your choice, if you use those to get around, then you can find a link to it in the description of this video. I always try and remember to remind people, because if I don't mention it in the video, then people tend to ask me, can I download GPX files of this video? And they're always there down below the video in the description. And while you're there, don't forget to hit subscribe, because you'll be able to find more routes just like it, and it's a great way to get across London, and hopefully this will help you do it. Now we're heading down towards the Victoria Embankment, which has a great cycleway along it. That construction work on the left there, by the way, that is construction work for the Thames Tideway tunnel, which is a massive upgrade to London's sewer system, I believe. And normally when you get a big project like that, actually you get all sorts of issues. They take the cycle lane out of commission, they use it as part of the construction site. But actually, even though there are a few places where work's been done, they have actually put really good diversions for cyclists on. I think this is TfL's sort of gold standard flagship route, and the Tideway stuff was coming in just after they installed it, so it would have been a bit ridiculous for them to take it out of commission entirely so quickly. So there is a diversionary route, but it's so good you might not even realise that it is a diversion. I do wish that it was the case on more construction projects actually, that they would consider cycles when they close roads and stuff, because often a cycle lane is seen as like free space. It's like, oh, we can take this away and we're not going to disrupt any motor traffic, but actually it just makes things difficult and actually quite dangerous for cycles. So we saw that with the broadband installation that we saw earlier in the video in two separate locations, where often it's trivial just to put a cycle contraflow in, or a bypass for the lights or something like that, but no provision seems to have been made for that in those cases, and it's actually pretty rare to see it. So it's nice to see them do a good job on the Tideway. Fair play to those guys. So yes, generally this is a really high quality cycle route, and it's a real joy to ride on. I actually wish that there were more routes like this down the main roads, and hopefully there are more coming up. Now, this actually coming up on the left here, these hoardings, is actually the diversionary route. So you can see the cycleway used to go along the river, and now it's sort of going around to, and they've added a bit of temporary segregation. That's what I was talking about earlier. There's a bit more tideway works going on the left there. One thing that I would say is do be a little bit careful as you go around this corner, because it's a little bit blind, and sometimes you might find that a pedestrian has confused it with a pavement, or someone might be coming down the wrong way, or they might have stopped in it. So, go very cautiously through that bit so you don't end up in a collision or anything like that. And we seem to be doing alright here. There's New Scotland Yard on the right, as it really should be called, and this is the Norman Shaw building on the right now, the red brick one. That's some parliamentary offices. And then again, you've got Portcullis House, which is yet more parliamentary offices. And then there's a tunnel under the road there between Portcullis House and the Palace of Westminster. That's all part of the parliamentary estate. So below us, there may well be MPs walking. But we're actually there now. This is obviously Big Ben on the left and Parliament Square here. And Parliament Square Tesco, a major landmark there on our right. And thanks very much for watching this, guys. I hope you find it useful. Definitely planning on doing some more routes from sort of Finsbury Park, Haringey, Green Lanes area. So if you've got any ideas of where you'd like to see routes between different configurations, let me know in the comments below. And also let me know what you think of the route, maybe the bits you think need to be improved. Yeah, really open for hearing any suggestions or comments. Thank you very much, and see you again next time.